Hi, my name's Rosie Poku. I am a senior, and I'm originally from Central Georgia, but now I split time between there and Needham, Massachusetts.
Hi, I'm Lydia. I'm a senior. I'm from Revere, Massachusetts. I live in Paul Revere.
Hi, I'm Ms. Bahari. I'm a senior, 4-year senior.
I'm Amadi Asok Glastonbury. I'm from New Jersey and I'm a senior.
I'm Kika Freiberg. I'm a senior and I'm from Newark, New Jersey.
I'm Malika. I'm from Burkina Faso in West Africa. And I'm a senior. Oh, thank God.
Hi, I'm Steph. I'm a 2-year senior, originally from Colombia, but now I live in New York, Long Island, not New York City.
Hi, my name is Madison Pedaway. I'm a senior from Providence, Rhode Island.
My name is Daphne Ordonez. I'm from Los Angeles, California, and I'm in 12th grade. I'm a senior.
So what was the transition like when you first came to Andover?
So I've actually been thinking a lot about that, about like how I didn't know what to expect. I just thought it was going to be a big, different, scary place, and it lived up to that expectation. But I had come from like a middle school, predominantly Latino and African American, where I didn't know too much about. I didn't know what the East Coast was. I didn't especially know about what prep culture was. I had learned most of it from like movies and TV shows. So it was hard to realize that there was like portions of like cultures that had completely different social hierarchies, that completely valued different things that I didn't even know existed. I vividly remember like seeing everybody getting Patagonias and like calling my parents and be like, I need to buy this sweater. And they're like, you're being ridiculous. I'm like, no, I need to. And I did, and yeah.
So I think I grew up in a predominantly white town, predominantly white family. So Andover was actually the most diverse space I'd ever been in, and it was the most black people I'd also ever really been around, besides my dance studio that I went to only like twice a week. So I actually, when I first got here, I was not friends with black people. And I think it was subconscious. It wasn't entirely intentional, but it might have been like, I don't know, there was like a lot of internalized like hatred and racism. So I don't think it was until the spring term when the class of 14 started sort of like the more than just a number movement on campus, when I started like actually identifying as black and realizing that like I don't know, that I was hurting in a lot of ways, and then I started connecting more to black faculty members and students on campus, but it was definitely a strange transition. When I first got here, I very much like felt like I wasn't really black.
Okay, so I came in as a new upper, so I had like done 2 years of high school. I was gonna do my last 2 years here, and I mean, the starkest difference for me was being in an environment that was like actually really diverse. I know that there are like a limited amount of people of color on this campus, but compared to my old school, there was a lot more. But it was also like a lot more cultures than I had ever been around. Like, yeah, I lived in New York, but it was mostly around like black and Latinx people, but now it was just like people from like all over the world. So that was like actually a really cool transition, and like I met my roommate who's from Pakistan, and like learning about her culture and like kind of comparing it to mine was really cool. But there were also hard parts because my old school had been like the smartest and like all that stuff, and then coming here it was kind of like a shock to the system, but I got used to it. Yeah, it was good and bad parts. The whole year kind of took a lot of time.
So I came to Andover as a new lower. So obviously just coming in as a new lower was different in the sense that I didn't really have as much time as people who were freshmen, but it was, it was difficult in the sense that like socially I was trying to integrate groups that already existed, and in terms of my identity I was trying to figure out like how I fit into the black community here as an international student, but as an international student of color. So it definitely was difficult. It was a very difficult transition, but I think I finally found my place senior year, which seems like it's a little late, but it did make me happy to sort of realize senior year that I could look around and be like, I genuinely appreciate all the people here. So even if it takes time, it happens.
It for me, so I went to a junior boarding school before this. So in a lot of ways, it wasn't that bad. It was just like a continuation of that experience. Do you want me to talk about the one, I don't know if to middle school, if that's wild. I come from Newark, so that's the biggest city in New Jersey. We don't really have elite boarding schools in our community at all, so I think that process is wild right at the beginning, but to Andover it wasn't that bad.
So how has your identity affected your time at Andover, and how has Andover affected your identity?
I think Andover is one of the first, I think at this age was the first place where I like really started to think about my identity in this critical manner. Both my parents are Brazilians, so I consider myself Latina, having like grown up in the U.S. my whole life. But there weren't that many like Latinx kids where I came, in my old school, so I was trying to, I think, debating whether to like get more involved with that at Andover, but that didn't, I don't know, because I'm very white, I didn't want to take away the space of other, especially women of color, but people of color that need those spaces, I think, more than me, don't have like, I guess, white privilege or white passing privilege, whatever you want to consider it. And so I think I've like hidden that part of me. I mean, I'm very involved with my queer and women aspects, and I try to talk. The other identity aspect that has been kind of in flux is socioeconomic class, with Andover being a place with a lot of like very wealthy kids who aren't aware of their wealth. It can be very, like, I am on full financial aid here, but I also understand that my family has a comfortable lifestyle, so it's weird to have to like be aware of my privilege, whereas in these kids that I know are very much of a different lifestyle and I am very much more wealthy are not. Don't feel responsible for checking that privilege of theirs.
So I did summer session, which helped a lot because I just like got to know new people. It wasn't necessarily helpful in terms of how much work we're gonna have, but just like coming here and already like having friends and knowing the campus is really good. But even still, the vibe during the year was a lot different than it was in the summer. It was like a lot less international, like a lot less diverse, and just like obviously more intense because of the amount of work. So it was a little difficult at first, but getting into the swing of things, like, it happened over time.
Came to Andover.
It was really hard. I came from a predominantly Latinx and Black community, so I mean, coming here when like where I was like an underrepresented minority was a big shock to me because I didn't realize like this is what institutions like Andover would be like. And also academically, I also struggled because my school was very underfunded. So it was hard, but luckily I had a lot of resources and like a good community like AFLADAM and the sisterhood that helped me like go through it.
It was rough. I came from a predominantly Black and Latinx community, so coming around like all these white people was really strange to me because back at home, like the only white people were my teachers, so they were often like in these places of power, so I didn't really know how to interact with white peers. Like, what do you talk to white people about? It's like, I don't know. And then like academically, I just didn't speak up in class at all because at my public school, like, there were 30 kids in class, so it wasn't really a lot of room for discussion. And so I think like my racial identity and like just my academic side like sort of combined together because I always saw myself as a smart Black woman, but then when I came here I didn't really see either of those, and so I was sort of just like left like wondering what am I, what am I doing. And like I also didn't really know that I was a Black woman. I just like, since at home like yeah everyone was like brown, so I just like went with the flow. But like at Andover, like at the beginning, I started to realize like that I needed the sisterhood. That wasn't just like, oh, like that's just like a group of girls, like they're just doing their own thing. Like I really didn't think I needed that, but then it became clearer and clearer in a lot of like my white friendships and just like how I felt day to day that I needed some type of supportive base of underrepresented women of color. And I found that through the sisterhood at like the end of my freshman year. So I would definitely say like start the sisterhood earlier, or start like reaching out to like older underrepresented girls of color like really early on, because like I would reach out to them when I was at my lowest point. So it would have been better to do it earlier.
Well, obviously it was a hard transition. I don't know if it's obvious for everyone, but I really struggled to transition to a place that obviously wasn't anything like where I came from. I went to a small charter school in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So geographically it wasn't that difficult because I've lived in Massachusetts basically my whole life. But in terms of meeting people and feeling comfortable in a lot of spaces, it was difficult because I felt like all of the things I was afraid about coming into Andover were coming true. And I was remembering how in the 8th grade, like my teachers and everything were telling me about how difficult it would be for me to come here and how behind I would be academically. And so I was prepared for that, but I wasn't prepared for feeling as ostracized as I did, I think. And it was difficult for me to come to terms with and find words to describe what I was feeling in terms of the isolation. And it wasn't until I found other people who shared those sentiments and were able to help me put it into words that I felt more comfortable.
How has your identity affected your time at Andover, and like how has Andover affected your identity?
I think that actually before I came to Andover, I was a lot less conscious of like being a woman of color. I mean, it must like probably a lot of it was like age factor, but also my town at home is a lot more diverse. Like I think it's like 60% white, like 40% black or something, and like so I just like I don't know. It just felt like something that was like not an issue. Like living in like a white world didn't really feel like that to me. So then coming here, like I just kind of realized like what the rest of a lot of places in America are like, and how it was just like I don't know, it was difficult like transitioning for that reason, like because it just kind of like I was forced to kind of like pay attention to a lot more things. Like I never knew what a microaggression was, and like I'm sure it happened to me before I came here, but I didn't know what it was. And like so just becoming more conscious of things like was actually harder. Like being aware of like when people were saying things to me, like what they really meant by it, and it was just like hard. But yeah, so I think that's had like the school's had a big effect on like how I see myself.
It was hard being an underrepresented minority because sometimes like no one could understand what I was going through, and also just coming here and being like one of the few people who was like fluent in Spanish, like that like was a big shock for me because everyone at home could speak Spanish, and then here it was like, whoa, that's so exotic or something. So it definitely gave me a stronger sense of identity. I'm very proud to be Latina. It was hard.
This is still a question I ask myself a lot, and because you know I've usually been very sort of sure of my identity in the sense that back home in Burkina Faso everything is sort of based on ethnicity and your ethnic group, and I knew my mother's ethnic group who was from Benin, my father's ethnic group from Senegal, and like we all sort of bonded in that sense. But at the same time, like my environment in Burkina Faso was mostly black people because West Africa, and so I never felt like my skin color and how it intersected with my gender had anything to do with how I was living my life. I just like I don't know, like I knew I was black and it didn't really affect my day-to-day life because most of my friends were black too. But then I sort of came here and I didn't understand why my version of blackness like wasn't as applicable to the Andover community. Like I also was learning about the sort of like predominant like New York sort of like hip-hop culture that is on campus in terms of like the underrepresented student of color community. And so that was really difficult for me because I felt as though I was sort of doing my blackness improperly or performing my blackness wrong because I didn't have as many friends. I didn't have as many underrepresented friends of color. So that was definitely difficult for my identity because I didn't know where I fit in at all. I didn't fit in with my white friends. I didn't fit in with my like international friends completely, and I didn't fit in. I felt like I didn't fit in with the Black community either here. So that was difficult. But now in retrospect, I realized that like the sort of myth of Black culture isn't a real thing because racial culture isn't a real thing. And so that was definitely really helpful for me in my identity because now I feel a lot more comfortable.
For me, my Latina identity really ties to like my family and to like things like that. So no matter what, I'm not gonna get that here. But what I did find was like, okay, I definitely don't fit in with like white or Asian kids. I'm gonna hang out like other people of color who sort of do get it, and that does happen to be like Black people. Just that's how Andover is. And I've like learned so much, and like I'm forever grateful for that. But I think it's easier for no matter what your race is or like friend group to talk more about race issues, like looking at Black versus white, and I'm not in that, or like I'm in like the crevices and the cracks of it. So it's hard to sort of like having to put my voice in there when like to even put that in there I would have to lay down like a whole framework and like ground and like basis because it's not often explained. Where like
that spring term is really when everything started changing, and then I really started examining like my whole life really, and realizing that because I'm biracial too, so I always sort of just associated more with my mom, and I'm like, oh well, you know what, the only difference is that my skin's a little darker, but there's really a lot of differences. And Andover, I think, helped me to recognize that, and then not to hate myself for that, but to like embrace my Blackness a lot more, and not to say that there haven't been setbacks and challenges and racist moments, many on this campus, but there's also been a great support from the sisterhood and from the Black faculty members on this campus to help me to better understand myself.
And so how's your relationship with your body and your self-esteem developed over the course of Andover?
Freshman year was a really difficult year just because I'd always been the fat friend, and yet at Andover I couldn't escape that. Like at home I could escape that when I went home and I was just like beautiful Madison, but like at Andover just like all the time I was like surrounded by these like slimmer girls and comparing myself to them, and so freshman year was like a really hard year for me. And so I started like looking in my mirror a lot, and I started telling myself that I'm beautiful like every single day. I had like expo markers and I was just like write I'm beautiful, and I was just like get in the habit of just like telling myself because no one else is really telling me that. And just like I like look in the mirror a lot like for maybe 5-10 minutes a day and just like admire myself because I am stunning. So I would definitely say like that's like something that's helped me a lot. Like even though I do still struggle with my body time to time, like at the end of the day I do accept that my body's going to change multiple times in my life, and I have to accept it at each and every phase. And so like that's how I've seen like getting used to like loving my body, but I still don't know if I'm like comfortable sharing my body with others, like personal thing.
And so how's your identity affected your time at Andover, and how has Andover in turn affected your identity?
Andover really helped me grow into my identity, just because when I was younger, like I never identified as mixed, but whenever it came to like sharing fun facts in the class, I would say, oh, like I'm German, Black, and Native American. And it would just be like sort of, I never saw it as like core to my identity, but like Andover really helped me figure out how I do want to identify racially and like what that means to me. I just never talk about it at home. It's not really a topic in my house. And so Andover is the space where I really became like woke, and like I learned all these like terminology that like helped me like have these conversations with like my fellow underrepresented peers of color, and it just really gave me the vocabulary to have these tough like in-person and inner conversations with myself and just become more aware of what I'm feeling. Because I oftentimes thought that all these like racialized experience that I was experiencing were just personal to myself, but then Andover helped me like connect to a greater body of students and theorists like who like showed me that no, this is just like a recurring thing, and that like it's legitimate. And so I think it like legitimized my identity for me. But like in terms of like how my identity shaped my time at Andover, I don't know. Like I feel as if since I've like blossomed into a go-getter, I guess, like someone who tried out for a lot of positions, got quite a few of them, and like I was also like an underrepresented woman of color. I felt as if I became sort of like the spokesperson for like a lot of like the Black community, and that's like really tiring to be that. And also like it's false, like I'm not like no one person can represent an entire community. And so but I often feel as if I'm always pinpointed as like the palatable Black girl, and so like that's been a tough thing to deal with.
Okay, so at Faye, which is where I went before, I was there. It was a very small class. I was one of the like, I got exoticized and fetishized, I think, pretty early on, and sexualized, partly because of the way like the people that I was friends with and trying to be friends with, and just trying to grow up. So I was very sexualized, and I gave myself into that. And then I came to Andover, and none of that continued. And I haven't done much. And I think that's, if we're talking about like body image specifically in terms of like the hookup culture at the school, there has never been really any sort of pathway with me in that hookup culture. The other kind of weird aspect of that too is that I've like I did dance a lot here, and and I think just part of growing up or stuff, my body has like, as my grandmother or my family members say, like I've gotten skinnier, and part of that is that I've lost a lot of like what like we colloquially call curves, and like so like my butt and stuff, which has always been a part of like my Latina identity, has been having those curves, and that has lost. And then that in conjunction to going with like to a very like white school when you are very white, and kind of giving into this culture, I think it hasn't been good as a whole.
And so knowing that, like, what do you do to make yourself feel intelligent and beautiful and sort of loved on campus?
I think I've really formed really good relationships with some people that are really good. I mean, the interviewers here know Alice, and y'all as well, but you guys have been more in the past like half year, which has been like amazing, and in terms of like finding other women who don't have anywhere, I think, near the background that some of these like this institution holds up, these like white like American kids, or so I think there's that. I've tried to go to Sykes. It's kind of a hit and run. I personally talk to my folks a lot, but a lot of things is like talking to other women on our campus and being like, it's not okay for me to feel this way. Perhaps other people don't, but it's not perfect, and I'm not able to completely get out of it, I think, sometimes, but we try.
And then I came to Andover and like saw all the people. So like I didn't know what white people like really were before I came to Andover. Like I see that as seriously as possible. Like I just didn't know any. And then I came, and like whenever I read like the census and saw like 50% of the U.S. or like more than whatever is white, and I was like, where are they? And so I came to Andover and I like met all the people that looked like the people on TV and looked like the people in the magazines. And not only were there tons of them, but everybody like seemed to praise that and seemed to like that was the ideal. And then I looked at myself, and I was like, oh, that's not me. So it has been hard to sort of come to terms with the like trying to figure out, like, even though that's not me, like, then what do I do with myself? Like, who am I? Like, is it really their problem, or just like trying to convince myself that it's not me, that it's like other people? But when I don't look like what people are sort of saying is like the best thing, like that really does bad things to your to my self-esteem, to what how I learned to value myself. Even though I could get grades and I could, like, teachers could tell me these things and my friends could, like, when there's a lot of it going against that, it's hard.
You know, I can't tell if Andover has boosted my ego or, like, really crushed my confidence. Like, it's done both in, like, different ways, you know? Like, it's made me more confident academically, I guess. But in terms of body image and, like, loving myself, I don't know if I would have better body image and confidence if I had stayed at home. I think about it a lot of the time, actually, like what my life would have been like if I had chosen to not, like, leave my community that I grew up in. And I think in a lot of ways it really crushed my self-esteem in that I felt really undesired as a girl of color, and I felt like I was just complaining all the time, and I felt like I was being the annoying black girl who's always complaining about being swept under the rug, but it was the reality of being here. And I don't know, I see it all around with other girls of color as well, and like seeking approval off of like things like Tinder and things like that, because we're so underappreciated.
Ooh. My body and my self-esteem in general has sort of taken a hit at Andover, I must say. Just because there were so many aspects of beauty that I had never thought of coming at Andover, you know what I mean? Like, back home, it was like, yeah, like I gained, I don't know, it was more like nitpicky things that a lot of girls worry about, and here it was literally like your entire identity is invalidated as a human being. Like, it's not like you're not seen, either you're seen in an extremely sexual manner or not at all, and people automatically underestimate you, or people automatically like don't think of you as an attractive or as a like person worth like putting interest in, and so that sucked.
So I've always been a pretty confident person. Growing up, I was never like skinny. I was kind of like a fat kid, like definitely was, and like had kind of some things going. Like my mom would be like, eat less, and I'd be like, I don't know. But then I joined crew in the 9th grade, and I like lost a bunch of weight, but also like still wasn't like super skinny or anything. So coming to Andover, like I did 2 years of high school already, so I kind of had a sense of who I was. And I was pretty confident at the time, but there were still small things that got to me. Like I never wore a crop top, but now like I came here and I saw like all women with like awesome body types, and like everyone was wearing whatever they wanted, and it kind of gave me more confidence to do the same thing. I make my own crop tops now, started yesterday, and I think it's for the most part better. I mean, it wasn't like a huge change because I've always been pretty confident. That's just who I've been as a person. But like seeing a lot of different body types on campus, a lot of different like women of color on campus has like given me that extra push.
I think Andover definitely does not make underrepresented girls of color feel pretty at all, and that's hard. Yeah, so I think Andover's taken a toll on me there. I don't know if I think any predominantly white institution will do that. Yeah, that's rough.
Definitely. I think, again, like going back to kind of like the age factor of it, like getting older has definitely in general helped with my confidence, but like self-esteem on campus, like it's just like non-existent for me sometimes. Like it's hard because it's like I feel like as much as I like tell myself like I don't need like validation, I think it's still like nice when someone like is telling you that like you're like an attractive person, or like when you have like the outside world telling you like you're not in a lot of ways, or like the culture of the school telling you you're not. It's kind of like difficult. But I've also like felt off campus that like it's like that I like feel better about myself when I'm not here. So I definitely think it is like a factor, like being here like as a person of color. But like just in general, like I think age and whatnot has like helped. But yeah.
And sort of going off of that, like how do you think that plays out in relationships, either romantic or friendships?
I think most friendships here, or friend groups, are segregated. Like that's the only word to describe it. And if they're not, then there's, at least in my experience, there still is some like hierarchization within those friendships, because you do see your like dainty white friends getting more attention than you, and you do see how like, or me with like other friends of color, we're like, wow, like we're all awesome, but like why isn't that being noticed? Like we all obviously like care and appreciate about each other and like can build each other up, but like how do we deal with like a culture that doesn't, and sort of like really working on like acknowledging that and like talking about like how shitty it is, about like really just tearing apart the hookup culture and how absurd it is here. Yeah, maybe it's just a lot of what my friends talk about, but I don't think so. I think what I have observed is that like everybody knows it's here, at least us affected by it, acknowledge it.
So in what ways do you sort of seek affirmation, healthy ways or unhealthy ways? And then going off of that, like what have you learned about yourself, and what do you do to make yourself feel intelligent and beautiful?
My mother has been like my number one hype woman since day one, and I like every day she'll like call me and like sometimes I'll just send a selfie in my family group chat and she'll be like, oh, my beautiful daughter. My mom has just been like such a source of confidence for me, even though when I was little she kind of like backtracked a little bit because of my weight, but like even then she would still be like, you're so beautiful, and she's like, I love your legs, and like I thought my thighs were fat, and she's like, no, you have the best legs. So my mom has definitely been like someone who like since I was born has just made me kind of narcissistic, but other ways are kind of like, if you ask my friends, sometimes we'll be in like one of our rooms just chatting, and I'll go up to a mirror and just look at myself and be like, I'm so pretty, and like just say that over and over again, and, like because I believe it, and I'll just look at myself and be like, oh, you're so pretty. And it's like, a lot of people tell you that's narcissistic or whatever, but it's like a great way to tell yourself and like not rely on anybody else to do that for you. Because yeah, you can post a picture on Instagram and like, yeah, I get like that, like, oh cool, 100 people are liking my photo, like that's so great of them or whatever, and it is some type of affirmation, but that's not what you should be striving for. You should be striving for your like yourself to accept who you are, and like look in the mirror and say, you know what, you're a really pretty girl. And even if other people don't think that, you think that, and that's all that matters. Take a lot of selfies. I take so many selfies. Some of them don't come out great, but like I'm like, it's okay. They're good.
Okay, I think at first, like when I was younger, and I definitely see this amongst like the younger girls, like I was like seeing this hookup culture, and I was like, why am I not a part of it? And I wanted to be validated by like people and like boys and stuff, and like I'm like, why are all the white girls like getting with people? But then I like stopped caring. I was like, it doesn't matter, like honestly, as long as I'm like I sound like my mom, but I'm like, as long as I'm like doing well in school, like it really doesn't matter in the end of the day. Like Andover just has a very close-minded like mentality on what beauty is. And so yeah, I think at first I was like, I had a really toxic mentality about it. Like I was just trying to seek validation, like especially, you know, like those dances like Last Chance or Gelb and stuff, trying to like be a part of this culture. But I think now I mean I surround like I said earlier, I surround myself around like people who like value me, and like I don't know, I feel like that's like advice I try to give to younger girls, like surround yourself around people who make you feel beautiful, don't be around people who make you uncomfortable.
I follow a lot of
random black people on Instagram, honestly, and I just like try to like reinforce that, like, so in my mind that I like can see black is beautiful and like all these like black models and like natural black hairstyles particularly too, because I don't see it every day like in Andover, the town and the school, so just like social media is really where I try to reinstate that.
So
I think at first it was definitely more on the unhealthy side. It was like every like weekend trying like freshman year, like, oh, I wonder if this will be the weekend that like something happens. Like it never was. I like this is my last week of senior year, and it never happened. I think that, I don't know, talking to my friends and realizing we were all going through the same thing, that was helpful, and sort of starting to talk about other places, other communities that we had seen where it's not like this. And I think a lot of the hope came from like realizing that the rest of the world isn't like Andover. I know of myself and maybe some other people who like we like would joke around on like Tinder and things like that, and it's like it was at the end of the day like it did feel good that like there were people out there who would like swipe right or whatever. But at the end of the day you come back and it's not here. But I think just hearing stories about like older women who have passed through the same thing, or looking around to like really, really awesome people on campus and elsewhere who have gotten older, and like you see how fulfilled they are with their careers and with their accomplishments, with or without like outside affirmations of like their beauty and things like that.
Well, since I've never really experienced, like, tried to get into the hookup culture just because I wasn't comfortable with that. So instead, I seek affirmation through emotional connections to people. And, like, that's great when it's, like, other unrepresented women of color. But when it's other people, it just become, like, emotionally draining because they don't really know how I'm feeling. And they never really ask. And so it became mostly, like, me becoming this mammy figure, this, like, therapist figure for, like, a lot of people, especially, like, a lot of white guys. But I felt as if, like, yes, like, they need me in a way, like, I'm helping them somehow. And so, like, it was really unhealthy just because, like, after the encounters, I would feel drained, and I would wonder, like, what this means for me. Like, do they like me? Do they think, like, I'm a cool person because they can tell me about, like, all of their issues and stuff, and they don't seem to tell other people about their issues. And so, like, I don't know, that, like, I think, like, that was the worst because it was just, like, emotionally draining. I just didn't know how to escape that at all. It was just always in my thoughts, like, what they were thinking about me, and, like, how I was helping them. And I wasn't focusing on myself at all, and they weren't helping me focus on myself. And so definitely, like, not having, like, 50-50 relationships, but feeling as if that was a good thing was, like, one way that I sought affirmation. And in a healthy way, I would say just, like, being with my friends and just, like, I don't know, looking good. Like, whenever, like, I'm, like, going to an event, like, putting my all into, like, what I'm wearing because it makes me feel personally good. And then, like, hey, if I, like, receive a compliment, that's great. But, like, just, like, seeking self-affirmation is, like, an amazing thing. So that's just a thing.
So I definitely found a lot of strength in my friends, and beyond that, it spread to like all girls of color on campus. And I didn't really think about it until like my upper year, but I was like, you know what, like no one will understand me on this campus more than girls of color. Like other girls of color, like even if I'm not friends with them or even if I'm not super close with them, like I want to have some type of community. And I think actually like as a community we've built a really strong connection, and I've really appreciated that because there are a lot of people that like I wouldn't see regularly, and like who like I don't normally have like dinner or lunch with or whatever, but I feel so reaffirmed by them, like whenever I talk to them in passing or whenever I have like conversations with them. I don't know, I love having that community to fall back on, and I love that it's really like its own friend group, and how we're always like commenting on each other's stuff and like on social media, and how we're always just like complimenting each other because like no one else really understands like how much we need that like positive affirmation.
but really like finding people of color just to vent to that'll like 100% understand me and just like validate what I'm saying and not say, oh well maybe it's because XYZ, but be like, yeah, it's a racist world, like I'm sorry, like I feel you, this happened to me too, and sort of like be together in those moments is I think what's been the most helpful, and especially hearing it from adults too, just made it feel a lot more valid.
Intelligent, I don't know, I just feel like I mean at this point especially I'm like, hey, like I made it here, like I'm graduating in a couple of days, like I'm smart. Like I think, yeah, so I just gotta like tell yourself you're smart and you're pretty, because like it doesn't matter, like no one else is doing it, like you gotta do it. So it's like, but also like you like are like to all the underclassmen, like you guys are smart, like it's like if you're here, whether you're like bombing your classes or not, like I feel like you guys are all so smart, and like it's just, it gets hard sometimes, and like not being able to do your work doesn't make you like dumb, or like if like you're having a hard time in a class doesn't mean you're not smart. Like I think anyone who's like on this campus is like a smart person. So
Like some days I was literally like, you know, if no one tells you you're beautiful, then you aren't, which is wrong, very wrong. And so yeah, that's what I started doing. You know, I started like I started writing a lot, and I literally wrote notes to myself, and I was like, you know, stop this, like you're not going to get validation from certain people, and you need to accept that, and you need to realize that you are a phenomenal human being, and you have friends who love you, you have girls of color who love you and will uplift you, you have faculty of color who will love you and who will uplift you. And like that was really big, because whenever I was hitting like a sort of low point, I'd read the notes I wrote to myself and I'd be like, yeah, you're right. And so yeah, definitely like writing to myself, connecting with other girls of colors.
I always make sure to surround myself around people who like know that I try not to be around toxic people who are gonna like bring me down, and like I always make sure to compliment my friends, and like especially the girls of color, I'm like, you're beautiful, like this is just society telling you. And also I think there's like a movement, I'm not only on Andover but like on Twitter and stuff, like empowering and like uplifting girls of color, and so I always make sure to like stay on that. And I also, this is really cheesy, but on my mirror I used to have like this little sticker that said you're beautiful, just so like every morning when I woke up and I saw myself, I'm like, yes, I am beautiful. It doesn't matter what people think, as long as I know it, it's fine.
nice.
Yeah.
And so do you think that when we talk about sort of the hookup culture on campus, especially in like the sisterhood and sort of unrepresented communities of color, like do we leave out queer folk and queer voices, and like how can we change that?
That's actually an interesting. So I never went to sisterhood. Like as I was saying before, I'm very white, so I never wanted. I felt uncomfortable or weird that I would be taking away other people's space. But having been to GSA, like, and part of like GSA leadership. So I think for the most part, the GSA leadership is very, very white, and has been very predominantly white. But I've always been surprised by the amount of like queer people on campus that are underrepresented people of color. So I think that's an interesting like. That I don't know the statistics, but that just seems always really high. That like a high percentage of the people that were out on this campus were people of color. Granted, that does not mean we change how we talk about the hookup culture, and I think the hookup culture in general is very heteronormative, and so then any conversations that you have talking about it ends up being very heteronormative, even in attempting to try to combat it. And I think recently also we've been trying to have a lot of conversations about masculinity, and like how, in conversations I've had about how men of color, underrepresented men of color treat their underrepresented women of color counterparts, which is a very like binary and heteronormative like structure. So in that way, like it does become, but yeah.
I don't believe so. I think that queerness and sort of anything beyond heterosexuality is almost always seen as something that exists for white people on campus. And like in general, we don't talk about queerness enough on campus. We assume heterosexual relationships all the time. I mean, parietal rules, et cetera, et cetera. But especially in the underrepresented student of color community, like I feel like we don't include queer voices nearly as much as we should. And that's a general problem in a lot of communities of color, like where we sort of treat queerness as that's a white people thing. That's like not something that applies to us, and that's wrong, and that's invalidating, especially since already as a Black woman I feel invalidated, and like for women who also are queer, that's another added layer of like feeling like you don't belong. And so we need to do a better job in the sisterhood, in our conversation in general, and realizing that the queer community exists and is important to our sisters of color.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
I think like a lot of times we talk about the hookup culture at Andover, and we're like underrepresented girls of color are excluded from that, and that's true. And queer people are also excluded from that. Like the hookup culture is entirely straight, and I think that's a problem. And I think it makes Black girls think then, because I feel like a lot of the straight underrepresented girls on campus are like striving toward this like male acceptance as like beautiful, and then like to not want that, like as a queer woman, like to not want that, like it's a weird concept that's been so drilled into me that like you need a male approval to be considered beautiful, and like I am not interested in men, so it's like I think we need to really work on like expanding our conversations about hookup culture and relationships romantically generally, because it shouldn't be that like queer girls feel the need for boys and men to validate their worth, or straight girls like by any means. But I think a lot of heteronormative mentalities are what sort of like bond people, and that really can make queer girls feel left out.
Do you have any advice for like younger students to like help them build relationships with adults? Like how do they reach out to them?
A lot of my close relationships have been through either classes or dorms, but like all of the like teachers that I'm close to are, I think, mostly women of color, and the ones who aren't are just like very supportive people. And like I'd say like any of them would be very willing if you went up to them and were just kind of like, hi, like I want to get to know you. Like they're all like, the ones that I know are just very like open people and very nice people. So I think that like just like being a little bold and like having to just like go up to them and being like, hey, like I really love your class, or like I think you're really great, or I think you're really smart, and like they'll definitely be receptive to that.
I think I was lucky that I was just placed into a lot of classes with teachers of color, and my house counselor, especially Miss Paulson. If just talk to Miss Paulson, honestly, like she's so friendly. If you just say, hi, my name is blah blah blah, and I just wanted to talk to you, like she would sit down with you and like hug you and do whatever you need. But like seriously, I honestly just think like introducing yourself and not being afraid to like ask for help or just to break down even in front of faculty members, especially Miss Paulson, like the connections will form.
Yeah, so I had the privilege to go to summer session with Madison, and I met LCG there because she was the house counselor, and so she's always been a very like helpful support system for me, and just like being able to go to her and talk to her about being like an underrepresented girl of color on campus. And also Miss Springer has also been very helpful. She always makes sure to like reach out to us and like make sure that we're feeling comfortable if something happens to someone in our community. Like someone I know in the beginning of this school year, like 2 boys of color got kicked out like on the same weekend or something. So we had a meeting and we talked about it, just talking about relationships and what it's like when you're like being told that you're ugly as a girl of color, but you're like actually like not. It's just society telling you that. But yeah. It's like very different getting support from a faculty member of color than a white faculty because they don't like really understand your experience. They see it more on a superficial level. Yeah.
So in terms of like the underrepresented like student of color community at Andover, what do you feel as if it can work on to be more inclusive and more of like a good space for students? Like, do you feel as if there's too much of like a New York culture around it? Like, what are the things that you feel as if it could work on?
Yeah, I think there's definitely like a New York culture for the whole school. Like I think all the white people pretend they're from New York too, and I don't think it's particularly like the New Yorkers are sitting down and say like New York is the best and you must act like this. I think it's a lot of internalized stuff from all of us, in that we recognize New York as this sort of authentic blackness, and then idolize that. And I think us having to recognize the diversity of places we come from, and recognize the diversity of like ways and personalities and just ways we go about living our lives is really important, and to recognize that blackness is not as monolithic, that you don't need a monolith of blackness to have solidarity. There's a lot of diversity within that, and just
So I think, especially living in New York, I definitely saw that because I lived in a lot of different places on Long Island, but now I live kind of in like a whiter neighborhood, but it's surrounded by like a lot of Black and Latinx places, and I feel like a lot of the times we put that culture on ourselves. We like to listen to certain type of music or dress a certain way, but I've noticed a lot nowadays that like white women and like white men also have been taking this hip hop culture and like bringing it to themselves, and we're like one thing that really bothers me is I feel like polo shirts, because I'm from Colombia, and like I really hate those shirts just because like he fucked up Colombia. Can I say fucked up? Yeah. Okay, cool. And like it was just a very negative image for what he did to like our economy and stuff, and it's like a hit whenever I see like a white guy who has like benefited from all his privileges his whole life wearing shirts like that, and I'm like, that's annoying, but it's part of the hip hop culture, and one of the reasons is because Kanye is selling this, and like Kanye as a black man has gone through a lot but doesn't understand that side of, I feel like, Pablo. And then another part is like white women, like they're starting to wear hoops and chokers and like overlining their lips, which has been something that like a lot of the Latinx community has done for like a long time, and then has been like judged for it, especially with like the lining of lips and hoops. Because I remember in like the 6th grade, I had these hoops that had like your name in it and a necklace, because my sister got one, so I wanted it, and I really liked it. And then like this white girl, she was like, you know, you look like really Latina. And in a very nasty way, and it's just something that stuck with me so much that like after that I didn't wear hoops until last year at the very end of the year. Like it took me 5 years to get over that, and now I wear hoops like every day. But it's something like small comments like that, even though they take advantage of it, will get to you, because I saw all these white girls wearing hoops, but then I felt like I had like a huge struggle with my identity, like being born in Colombia and being like raised in like super Colombian household but living here. So it was just something that like I was always bothered with, how they're like appropriating this culture but still making fun of us for it.
Well, when I first got here, I saw I understood what the like New York culture was, because like that was like sort of similar like to what my old school culture was, but like, I was never a part of that either. So I felt as if I felt like really less black than like a lot of my peers, like who knew the slang that I didn't know, and like who just felt comfortable with that, like they were just like all sharing something that I had never felt as if was a part of me. And like I don't know, I just felt really white. And I think that goes also to like my mixed identity. Like I just felt really, really white compared to everyone else, like who was from New York. I felt as if I was like less than, because like no one knew where Rhode Island was or that province had black people. They only thought about like Brown or like the East Side, like the really like white populations of Rhode Island. And so I don't know, like the New York, I think it's just like harmful, because like we consider like New York and like New Jersey to be like the only place where black people can come from, and like the only place where like black culture can come from. And so it just becomes this really like just terrible, like it's great for the people who are from there, like maybe, but also I don't know, like maybe they just feel as if they have to like build up themselves up to be like this like very, very much, you know, that type of person. But like for everyone else on the outside, it just sort of sucks, because you either feed into it or you just feel alone.
Totally. I think I was actually speaking with some friends about this, that the problem is that there are so few of us here that you can only be part of like one type of people of color group. And so I agree, it just so happens like that happens to be like pretty like New York focused. And so like for the better, you get to like, if that's not your culture, like I've gotten exposed to a lot of cool like music and like lingo and just sort of like the way people do it in a culture different than mine. At the same time, it is hard to like really sit in my identity and know that it is completely valid if it doesn't look like the identities that other people see that are here. Like my friends always joke about like, Isabel, like you're not even like Latina, like you're white. I'm like, well, that's because you don't know a lot of us. Like frankly, like even my closest friends, I'm like, it's because you don't know like that there are like lots of different types, and imagine like what people who don't hang out with people of color think, like, and it's even much more of a homogenized group. And yeah, I just wish there were more opportunities for like there'd be like the nerdy people of color, the like artsy people of color, the hip hop people of color, like like if we had a lot more of that, I think it'd be different.
Like, what are you tired of doing for the Andover community? What can Andover do to better accommodate you?
I'm tired of teachers in classrooms expecting us, and especially history classrooms, 300, expecting it to just be like a comfortable place for students of color to like have white students talk about our experience. Like that's just like not pleasant. But at the same time, like I don't want to be the only one talking about it. So it's just kind of, it's a hard balance, because it's like I don't want other people saying like, oh, like, well, like black people at this time must have felt, or like black people now, and I'm just like, you're not a black people, I'm a black people, so let's not. But at the same time, like I don't want to be the one teaching the class. So I think a lot of teachers definitely need more training in terms of like dealing with a diverse classroom and how to like talk to students and stuff like that. And I'm tired of feeling the need to like tell a teacher like that's not okay to say, or like even if I don't say it, like feeling that way. Yeah.
I'm tired of having to justify Latinx immigrants by using myself as an example. I'm tired of having to say, you know, we're not all bad because I'm here, I'm a good student, I got into a good school. Like, we're not all criminals. Like, that should just be something that people not assume, but like we shouldn't think that all immigrants are like these horrible people. And I have to keep using myself as an example to be like, no, don't worry, we're not all gonna like go like rape an entire community because of like what Trump is saying. And just like having to justify a lot of other people's actions through my own. And I think Andover has to do a better action with that by like speaking out against people who, for example, like we yelling build the wall last year in front of Sam Bill and nothing was done. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Steph. You look beautiful. This is amazing. Awesome. Thanks. I'm tired of. I'm tired in general, but I'm definitely tired of sort of being with people who just invalidate my problems and invalidate how I feel as a girl of color. I think a lot of my friends and a lot of the people who I love genuinely love me, but still have so much implicit bias and still have so many things that they'll associate to my identity and feel as though like are inherent to me, and I find that so hurtful and so frustrating. So I'm tired of having to prove myself as a faceted human being, and not as a caricature, and not as someone who can sort of just be categorized solely by my race and my gender. And I think it's frustrating when I have to explain to people that like, hey, I can do this, and it's not because I'm black, and it's not because I'm a woman. I can also just do this because I'm a human being. And so yeah, definitely.
Oh. Okay. I mean, I'm like tired of just like, I'm tired of always like having to explain to people like what it's like to be in my shoes, you know? Explaining like microaggressions to them, like why what white people are saying isn't okay. But I feel like that's like something that Andover can't really fit, or maybe it can't. I just don't know. I feel like it has to start with like faculty, because I mean, I was reading like the Colloquium article the other day, and how there's like 20-something% of our faculty is we're faculty of color, and they're like all leaving. So I think we need more representation. You know, they say like youth from every quarter, but it's like not true.
I'm tired of being tired. I'm tired of always being looked to as like, I don't know. Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries. Think about it. I can cut it.
I'm really tired of being looked at as like the really good black girl, or feeling as if there's so much pressure on me as a black student at Andover. I just feel as if I can never make a mistake just because I have to make up for like everyone else's like, I guess, perceptions of black people. Like I have to show them what a good black person looks like and that I can be that. And so I often feel as if I have to be perfect all of the time. And it's like the most tiring thing ever. And I just think Andover can add a little bit more humanity to the underrepresented students of color, because you're either made into a caricature or just made into like the perfect platform, like the perfect student who can never falter, who always has to be the role model, the sane friend, the person who doesn't do drugs, the person who takes care of the people who are on drugs or drunk, and you're just always put into this either perfect box or you have to be a caricature. And I just think like adding like a human aspect to like underrepresented students of color is like something that like Andover can do, and I don't really know how they do that. Like I honestly just think it's like what the students themselves, like just teach them that, and even the faculty, like teach them that we are people too. We're just not like you know, like what you want us to be. Like we have feelings, we have emotions, we have failures. Like we're the same blood and bone as you are, and so don't put any higher or lower expectations on us.
Well, there are certain things that are more difficult than just saying like, oh, I'm tired of this. Like, I'm tired of like whack ass guys of color, but like, how is the academy gonna fix that? I don't know. I'm tired of like having to explain why certain things are important on campus. Like when Melissa Harris Perry came to speak, and like I feel like a lot of the girls of color, I was talking to Ms. Springer about it, we didn't even realize how uninterested everyone else was. And I was so upset that everyone was so uninterested, because like that's thousands of dollars down the drain, and it was such an incredible opportunity to see her speak and to like actually listen to everything that she had to say. And like I learned something from it, so I assume everyone else can learn something from it as well. And it's like upsetting, because I feel like as girls of color, we're gonna have to keep advocating, and we're gonna have to keep fighting to have speakers like Melissa Harris Perry in the future, which I think are so important for not even just for like students of color, but for everyone on campus. And so I don't know, it's frustrating to think that we're gonna have to keep fighting for that because people don't appreciate it when it's such an incredible resource.
It's the same shit over and over. It's not like they say that we can come and tell them things, right? And we do, and perhaps sometimes we don't give them the complete truth. I will say that. Like, I don't go with every little thing that happens to me, and I know that a lot of other people don't, but that's, I think, also partly because we say it over and over, that we're not feeling love, that we're being mistreated, that there's like blatant racism happening on campus, that there's blatant sexism happening on campus, and then nothing happens, and the leadership's staying the same. So I'm tired of having to like complain over and over again. I'm also tired of, and I'm still struggling whether to see if this is the position I've created for myself, and if I have to continue being in this position, of being asked what specifically white men should do. Because it's like white men coming up to me and being like, I'm sorry we did this, or I'm sorry my kids did this, right? What do we do? And usually it comes after something has already happened. Think the Floridian, their graphics, think the boy screaming out of his window during Take Back the Night, you know? So I'm tired of that. And yeah, and the other thing is like, I'm tired that we have to be having these things of like, can you tell us that we're loved and that we're doing good shit, and it's not just the CAMD community and not just the social justice community, but it'd be really nice if someone in the administration genuinely and acted on it and genuinely showed us that they cared about us. So
You got this. You have so many people behind you. You have so many people who love you. Like, I love you. And, you know, you're gonna be tired. And that's a fact. You're gonna be tired. Your like self-esteem is gonna take a hit sometimes, but you have to bring yourself back up. Like, I wish I could tell you that you have the privilege of not being able to, but you don't. Like, we don't have that yet. You know, we really have to keep going. We have to build, like, bring ourselves up when no one else is bringing us up. Like, we have to tell ourselves that we're beautiful, because we just don't have the privilege of having someone else there. And you just gotta do it, girl.
Keep going. But also don't push yourself too hard. Like, if you really feel like you need a break, like, there's nothing wrong. Like, I went on SYA personally, and like, I don't know if I would have made it through this whole time without doing that. Like, I really needed a break, even if it's like a term where you go for a summer and do a program, like, just kind of like getting away from what you're used to, or like a day going to Boston and like going somewhere you've never gone before. Like, just like, I don't know, like, pause sometimes, but but also keep going. Like, don't give up.
it's gonna be hard, I think. It keeps going. We get there. We live.
You'll get through it. I was just saying that it sucks because I remember when I first got here, I don't know if you guys remember, LCG was like, this is one of the most diverse places you're ever gonna be on, and I think it's like sadly true. So I guess you have to try to make the most out of Andover, even though it sucks being in like such a predominantly white institution, but we have to persevere, because when we get to the workforce, it's gonna be mostly white, I think, at least for me, probably. But yeah, you just have to persevere and be strong and keep fighting back. Yeah.
Ooh. I don't know. I love you guys. I think that, you know, there are so many people here who love you, for all the people who make you feel like you aren't good enough, and you aren't like, you know, you aren't like worth it. There are so many people rallying behind you. There are so many people who are here to support you, like any of the seniors, any of the faculty members, like just everyone is out there for you and rooting for you, because like it's so important. I don't know, it's so important for all of us that we succeed and that we succeed together. And so yeah, just please believe in yourself. Please know that you are enough, and if you need someone to remind you, definitely find someone, because they're here.
You could do it. Like, for real, like, recall anyone, like, reach out to the people that that you've seen go through Andover. Like, it's not easy. Your experience is valid. I'm sure it is not easy. Celebrate yourself and your friends, and really just rely on one another, because you can't do it alone.